dance for joy or lust or anger and every time.
We'll look at nostalgic cars that are over 15 years old, but are practical and sensible and that you can buy for a budget of between £1,000 and £5,000. This is a 1983 Ford Fiesta 1.3 Ghia, but is it any good? Should you care? Let's find out, shall we? So when the Mark I Fiesta was launched in this country in February 1977, it was something of a radical departure for Ford of Europe. It was their first ever front-wheel drive car. And they've been studying the market for quite some time in the wake of cars like the Renault 5 and the Fiat 127, the Peugeot 104 being launched. And they thought, we're going to do something that will actually be, for most people, the best all-rounder we can get, and with as few compromises as possible. And so they made a car that was very light. The basic models with the 950cc and 1.1 litre engines only weighed, I think it was 750 kilograms. This one's about 840, I think, with this 1.3 engine, and make it very easy to service and work on, because front-wheel drive was still something that a lot of people were a little bit suspicious of. And actually they did a really good job, and the Fiesta was a really, really big selling car until its demise in 2023. This particular one is one of the last made. It's a 1983 model, and actually that was the year that the Mark II came out, which in many respects is just a very, very heavily facelifted Mark I. You can see they had a sort of winning formula, and they decided that they would continue with it, much in the same way as they did with the Mark III and Mark IV Ford Escort. The base engine in one of these cars was a 950cc Valencia engine in low compression form, developing 41 horsepower. In high compression form, it developed about 45 horsepower. Then there were 1.1s. Now there were lots of different 1.1s all over, the world for different markets, but we got two of them. One was the normal 1.1 with, I think it was about 53 horsepower, and then there was an economy tune one that actually had more horsepower, it's about 55. I also read elsewhere that in 1981 the normal 1.1 got up to 55 horsepower as well, but I can't find evidence of that in the 1982 brochure I've looked in. Then we have this 1.3 engine. For some reason, although they're very similar in design in some ways, the 1.3s were known as the Crossflow, and the 950cc and the 1.1 were known as the Valencia. They're both derived from the old Ford Kent engine. The Supersport Fiesta that came in 1980 uses a 70 brake horsepower version of this engine, and then the most powerful one of all was the XR2 that came in, I think, around 1981-82, and that had a 1.6 litre engine with 84 horsepower. Apologies, viewers, you've got some gardening noises going on in the background, although generally this place is quite quiet. It just happens to be, yes, where someone's got a garden at the back. This is a very, very late Mark I Fiesta. It's a 1983, and they were discontinued later the same year. Because this is a very late one, we've got the number plate actually on the bumper. The earlier ones before 1982 had the number plate just below the bumper. Also, we've got the later bumpers on this one. They are larger. Weirdly, when they did the facelift in 1981, you could actually still option some of them at least with the earlier bumpers, which is odd. The other thing that's changed were things like the door handles. This has black door handles. The earlier Ghias would have had chrome door handles. And the parcel shelf's actually different on this car as well. Not a major facelift. You could argue as well that the Mark II that came in 1983 was just a very heavy facelift of this car. In fact, I think you can switch the tailgate and the doors over if you want to. Right, I'm just going to pause a second whilst I find the right key for the boot. So, found the right key. Boot lock's operates in a very strange way. Just put that in there so you don't lose it. You don't want to lose the keys. This is later cars. It's got a plastic parcel shelf as opposed to some MDF type one. It's carpeted as well because it's a Ghia. If we move some of this out of the way, we can see that actually we've got a higher spec car, and there's little oddment bits in here that you can lock that compartment so you can have some privacy. This side is the spare wheel. There we go. Oh, got an alloy spare. Also got a separate reservoir for the rear wash wipe in there. You know, where your rear wash wipe was not a guaranteed thing on a Mark 1 Fiesta at all. A lot of them didn't have that. I think even maybe the base or popular ones didn't even get a reheated window at some time. This is one of the later cars. Whilst we've got the fog light, I think 1981 was the year we had to the fog light. Be careful not to leave the keys in the boot. I love these little overrides as well this car comes with. I just think the design is so clean as well. It's such a typical kind of shape from the late 70s, early 80s, but it's so clean in comparison with what the Fiesta actually became. And as you saw on the back of the car, Dave's put a little sticker in there mourning the death of the Fiesta last year. One of the problems you do find with these cars, and you can see here, is the front wings. You can just note a little bit of bubbling here. Otherwise the car's in really good condition considering it's 41 years old. So I think this car is about 2 weeks younger than me. It's around the same time I was born. This car was registered in January 1983. I was born a few weeks before that. So yeah, we've got replica tax disc, alloy wheels, side repeaters which came in I think with the facelift for the gears only in 1981. I could be wrong about that. But I love the side repeaters. Yeah, the wheels are also very nice. In fact, let's go through the interior of this side. Little coach line on the side of this car as well. It's done about 60,000 miles, this particular example. It's in very, very nice condition, apart from that little bit of rust on the wings, which is a really common spot for them. Compared with the sort of lower models, like, I don't know, a Popular or would be the base model at this time, it's got a fully trimmed door with the fabric on it, which looks really posh. And the dash is completely different from a low spec one. It's got this kind of full plastic thing. We've got an actual glove box lid. We've got wood effect trim down there with the radio, and up there with the instrument panel, which has a rev counter on it. We've got these lovely seats with head restraints on them. That gear lever, by the way, is not a original one. I had to actually ask Dave where reverse was because it's not on the panel up there as it would be on the base spec ones. A 4-spoke steering wheel as opposed to a 2-spoke wheel. You've got a pop-up sunroof, which I'm not going to open. And it is very, very nice. The biggest problem on these cars was that they rusted. There's no cam belt or anything in the engines. They're all overhead valve chain driven engines, so there's no cam belt to worry about. It was rust like so many other things at the time. Right, we're going to do what Mr. Manning from Matty's Cars channel requires me to do in such instance, and get in the back of a 3-door car. Is this going to be a problem? On the Fiat 127 it kind of was, so I'm not too hopeful, but there we go. Got some nice sort of things in the back pocket of here. Look at that, Ford Cars, May 1977, all model catalogue. 77 was the year that the Fiesta actually came to this country. It was introduced in other places in 76 because, well, here we've got a press information booklet, which actually, some of it is a news release from, I think it's 76, this one. There we go, look, not publication before July 76. I'm not going to spend too long on him. We could be looking through this information pack forever, but we've just got a few pictures. That is one of the engine bay. That is one outside Sainsbury's. That is, I think, for the launch of the 1.3 models in 1977. Interesting. So yeah, there's all sorts of stuff here that Dave has got. We just haven't really got time to look through all of that. And there we go. That is September 77 when they brought in the 1300cc engine. This car has 66 DIN horsepower. Let's get this back in here with one hand. Can I do it? Yes, there we go. There's not a lot really in here. We've got 2 ashtrays, also swivelling things in here. And we've got another one this side. If you're familiar with Mark II Fiesta, it does seem very, very kind of, you know, just the same, really. We've got grab handles in here as well. We've got this perforated headlining that's very common in cars at the time. The map pockets, twin map pockets at the back, is very exciting. You know, not even all cars these days have twin map pockets. I found out last week when I was in the West Midlands, some of the cars that I was filming that were, you know, 2018, 20 or something like that, they didn't have twin map pockets. Yeah, you've got to be careful about this seatbelt. You don't trip over it when you're getting in and out. It's actually not that bad in here. It's bigger than I was expecting. This is my driving position. I'm 5'11", and I fit in here sort of okay. I wouldn't want to go too far, but it's all right. You can see the owner of this car originally did not specify rear seatbelts. They were not required to be fitted to cars until 1987 and not required to be worn until 1991. So a lot of people just did without. I've driven actually a 1985 Mark III Escort that didn't have rear seatbelts either. So that's nice, isn't it? The seat fabric is really nice, actually. It's delightful. Even the fed restraints are actually filled in this car, so you get all the proper luxury experience. Look at these dials. Rev counter. And down here we've got the radio, FM, which unfortunately doesn't work. What Dave's done actually is put a switch in here for operating the aerial, so we'll do that in a bit. We've got big old ashtray, typical of a car design of the 70s. Very simple heated controls. That's a fan speed there. That is for the temperature. Ooh, and that is for the direction of the air. It's all on springs and things. Rear wash wipe is just down here. It's interesting that it's not on the wiper stalk, which is that thing. It's down here, so you can't really see that very well when you're driving at all. You can't really see it. Rear heated window, fog lamp, hazard switch. There's no telltale in there. You just down here. Glove box, actually, it has one. Oh, look at that cassette, Best of BBC Comedy of the 70s, Volume 2. Oh, there's Queen in there as well. Queen, the works. Fantastic. I'll have to see a little bit later on if we get the secret mission documents in there. And then we've got the other vents on top of there. On the base models, you didn't get a vent either end of a dashboard like this either. We've got a thing that's, don't know what that's for really, just putting extra stuff in, like actual, maybe even driving gloves. The sort of person who would have bought a Ghia in 1983 might have been to driving gloves. You've also got these door bins, which are not on all the models. I know, like a Popular, you wouldn't get those. You've also got these quarter lights. Now, I get told off for like not being able to open quarter lights, so we might have to skip those. But you've noticed we've got remotely adjustable driver's mirror, which is fine, but it would be better on that side because you can't reach that so easily. But yeah, it's actually really comfortable here. 4-speed manual. I think this is the only transmission available for a Mark I Fiesta. Later Mark II, you can get a CTX automatic, but I think you could only get a 4-speed manual. I think the XR2 gearbox were a bit different from the ones in more standard ones. Indicator stalk here with horn. We're not going to do that because we're in a built-up area and I don't want to do that. The lights are actually on here and the wipers are there. So if you're not very careful, it'd be quite easy to knock all the lights off if you turned the wipers off and you were driving at night. That's a common thing with Mark II Granadas and Mark III Escorts as well. They're sort of like that. Yeah, I really like this. It's very kind of similar in sort of execution to a 1983 Metro Vanden Pla that I drove in 2021, I think it was. It's even a similar colour, and the interior is a similar colour, so I can see maybe where Austin Rover got their sort of inspiration from to make a sort of Vanden Pla version. They were looking at the Fiesta gear and thought, well, we'll make something like that. Anyway, let's have a look under the bonnet. So, just like in that photograph we saw from the press launch of the 1.3, this is a crossflow engine, it's called. It generates about 66 horsepower. It is related to the Kent engine, as was the Valencia. For some reason, I don't understand quite why. The 950 and 1.1 engines are called Valencia engines, and the 1.3 and 1.6 are known as crossflow engines. I don't quite understand. This one, though, you can see we've got just slight differences. We've got, I think it's a twin choke carburettor on these 1.3s. There was also a more powerful 1.3 which used in the Super Sport that had about 69 horsepower, I think it was. It's not a huge difference, but a little bit more. One thing they really did go in for with the Mark 1 Fiesta was to make the car really, really easy to work on. And you can see the gearboxes here, we can see the ground below it. These engines are timing chains, so it wouldn't have required you to do cam belts like on the Pinto engines. It all looks very accessible. A lot of the parts, I don't think are even that difficult to find, the service parts. Built in Spain, of course, there we go. Still got the build plaque on there. One thing you do have to watch is the inner wings, which apparently are really, really bad rust spots, just particularly near where the strut towers are. This one actually wasn't too bad, but as you can see on the outside, it's actually where this car's starting to go. Bonnet opens forwards, Mark IIs with a similar, and also the Jaguar XJS is like this as well, isn't it? And many other cars. We'll just sort of drop that. It's very strange the way that stays up. There doesn't seem to be any kind of thing to help it not fall over, which I was a bit disturbed about when Dave showed me, but there we go. Right, I've been enjoying myself so much, viewers, that it is time to go out for another little spin in this lovely Fiesta. Excellent. So to drive, all Fiestas use a variation of Ford's BC4 4-speed manual for the Mark 1s. I think the XR2s do have a different gearbox than the standard cars, but as far as I understand it, I did ask Dave, who owns this car, about this. You couldn't get an automatic in these at all, not till the Mark II with the CTX. I have driven a 1.1 CTX Mark II. In fact, my grandfather used to own one of those in the late 80s, early 90s. He had one. My uncle actually had one of these. He had a Mark 1 in a very similar colour to this. It wasn't exactly this champagne gold, it was one of the earlier colours, because that was a 1978 car. Yeah, it's just very nostalgic even for me. You know, we weren't a massive Ford family back in the day, but you know, like everybody else, you knew someone who had a Fiesta. You partially tested a Fiesta. Your grandparents owned a Fiesta. Like, you know, Fiestas were just everywhere. I remember when my uncle had his Mark 1, which would have been in the early 1990s. It was a very old car by then. You could still just see them everywhere. You could pick them up for about £150 and they're classified and things like that. So the fact that this is such an amazing sort of survivor in such nice condition is fantastic. Driving this is not too bad, actually. The biggest problem is the brakes. The brakes are quite bad. It has got front discs, but they're just not very good. I think it has a brake servo, but it doesn't seem to be particularly effective. It's a bit better than the Fiat 127 brakes, because they don't have a servo at all. I have driven one of those, a 78, owned by a chap I know called Gavin. He's got actually two of them, but I've driven his 78 128, which Ford were clearly studying when they developed this Fiesta, having come out, I think, in 71 in saloon and then in 72 with his hatchback, because they used Fiat 127 test mules for, I think, the sort of drive shafts and the engine and transmission of these. And you can kind of tell it's just a bit more refined for one of those. The gearbox is a little bit easier, although for some reason it's very difficult to go to first sometimes. You go to second and then first, which is common on the older cars. But it's just, yeah, it's a little bit easier. Drive's just a little bit better. The gear changes are, on the whole, a little bit better. It's not quite got the same raw appeal as one of those has. I mean, they are quite good fun. I prefer this one though, because it just seems a little bit more refined, it's a bit more comfortable, but it's a bit more conventional than one of those. And obviously the engines were in use in Ford until 2002 with the Mark 1 car, so, you know, particularly the sort of 1.3, which rated in the Endura E engine. But I'm actually really enjoying this car. It's a shame we keep getting stuck in this traffic, but it just feels like a car that just somebody would have bought because they just weren't fussed about things. I mean, they're quite nice to drive. The steering is quite light, it's quite direct. Once you've got this gearbox warmed up, it's all right. And actually, I think you could probably do quite a long journey in this if you were wearing ear defenders, perhaps, because they are a bit noisy. you find it reasonably comfortable. You could do the 5th gear as well, but didn't get one. But yeah, I can see why people absolutely love this. I actually really like this. This is it's my kind of car, this. Very, very much so. Even more so than a Mark III Escort, actually. I don't like those as much as I like this for some reason. Don't quite know why. Maybe somebody in the comment section below explain to me why I feel that way. But yes, I'm very impressed, really. Let's now have a look at some Mark I Ford Fiesta trim levels. So when the car was launched in this country in 1977, the trim levels were the base one. It wasn't called Popular until 1981. L, that was the most popular one by far. GL, S. You didn't get any more power in the S model. You just got the car looked a bit more sporty. The one that I like, the Ghia, and then later on you got things like the Super Sport, which was a very rare, like limited production car. I think 80, 81 only the Super Sport, and then the XR2. After the car was faced with 1981, the base model became the Popular and the Popular Plus. Then after that, there were things like the Finesse, the Quartz, the Festival, the Sandpiper, the Millionth, because they sold a lot of these cars actually, the Kingfisher. One thing you do have to watch for in this car, apart from rust, is a general sort of neglect. Some of these cars were owned by people who either had their first car or their last car. If it was a last car you're looking at, you're probably looking at something that might be very, very low mileage, but could have considerable wear on the engine and gearbox, just due to lack of kind of use and the engine not warming up properly. There's also people who used to use this for DIY stuff, and of course maintenance on one of these was designed to be very, very easy, so some people have tried it and not done a very good job, so just be mindful of that. I would say a car like this, all of the Mark I Fiestas now are over 40 years old, so they're all eligible for MOT exemptions and ultra emission zone exemptions and things like that. You just need to find somebody who knows what they're doing to look at it carefully. But actually, you turned to a sensible second-hand classic. I think that for between £1,000 and £5,000, one of these could be a very, very good option indeed. But thank you ever so much, Dee, once again for watching. Thank you, Dave, for letting me have a go in his absolute pride and joy. Please don't forget to like this video, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. And we shall see you again very soon for some more reasonably priced nostalgic motoring.